Cousin Jared, we are here for Thursday, October 19th show of Picks with the Professor. I am the Professor, Cousin Jared. How we doing tonight?
Yeah, we're doing pretty well. FIU came through for us on the road against Sam Houston. We needed a good bounce back after Tuesday did not treat us well. We're doing much better tonight than we were last night. Is what I would say.
Yes, and then we've got UTEP as plus odds here, tied at the half, and a nail biter of terrible football. The Wednesday games were terrible. I mean, just for quality.
They are.
But kind of knew that was coming.
But that does not mean there are not money-making opportunities.
Correct. And hey, look, I asked people to comment about what games you want us to cover. And again, if you want all the bad football, make sure with us on Dub Club. Sign up, link in the show description. After the 30-second music, Cousin Jared, we're going to sit here for about 2 hours, talk about every other college football game and talk about what we like, what we don't like, what we would do. Every game where we say, hey, if you had to do something, what would you do? And give people some things to think about for all of the games this weekend. Again, this week only in the show description. Pay for 2 months, get all three free. That gets you through the rest of the football season and the start of basketball, just to see how we do with basketball. I think it's going to be great times. I'm really optimistic. I love the changes and the updates and the way the player-based football models have gone. Basketball money lines are just great. It's like people just don't understand probability, and we are just taking advantage of that left and right. And that's been my theory for quite some time, and it just continues to be proven true that the human brain is not meant to understand probability. I have spent a lot of time learning how to do that, and even I don't do it very well all the time. That's why we have the math to help ground us. Anything, Cousin Jared, to mention before we get started here with some Saturday games? Got 5 of them for you today, rather than just the usual 4. Got a freebie for you.
Yeah, free one. So let's get right into it.
All right, let's get to it then. Saturday at noon, BostonCollege and GeorgiaTech. You wanted some terrible football, people. Here is your terrible football. I have these teams back to back with each other, number 89 and number 90. Notice on screen I made a little bit of an executive decision here. I'm showing only efficiency numbers and their ranks. It was a little confusing. I didn't really know what I was even looking at. I'm the one who built the dang thing. So you got the efficiency numbers, but same scaling as always, right? It just doesn't have both pace adjusted and non-pace adjusted. This is just ignoring pace, how good we think these teams are. And the difference in this game to me is nothing. Boston College, as you can see, a little bit weaker on defense. Georgia Tech, a little bit weaker on offense, but both these teams just aren't very good. That's why we've got Boston College at plus 173. Georgia Tech should be favored being at home, but not by the price they are. Boston College should go win this game, and it wouldn't shock me. Plus 173 offers great value. It's no different than what we're always talking about, right? Because, Jerry, the idea is you don't even have to win 50% of them at a price like this to be profitable. If we win 45% of these type plays, we're going to make money. This is closer to a coin toss than people realize. I'm just at the high on Georgia Tech, not high on Boston College either, but anything can happen in bad football, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And before I come on here and start talking about games, very rarely do I really go in and kind of assess what Sideline has. I kind of just try to go off what I'm thinking and what I've seen. And this is a rare case where Sideline just 100% fully backs up what my eyes said, which was looking at what these two teams have done this year. What is materially different between these teams? I do not feel like there is much difference at all. And I think especially if Miami had taken a knee at the end of that game, instead of trying to run it, fumbled it, and Georgia Tech ends up winning, I really think that anyway, that's a way of me saying I think that if Georgia Tech had lost that game to Miami like they should have, that this game this line would be more like what Sideline would make it to be. But I think Georgia Tech's getting a little bit of a bump because they did ultimately beat Miami. I mean, there is literally nothing that I can see that sets these teams apart. Sure, give Georgia Tech home field advantage, but still seems like too steep of a price for Boston College. And Haynes King, I would say I watched a lot of Haynes King play football. His stats aren't too bad this year, but Sideline still has him rated as one of the worst Power 5 quarterbacks. So I would say don't be distracted by the statistics being okay. If you think that you're backing a better quarterback for Georgia Tech at home, that's not the case, in my opinion, and according to Sideline, not the better quarterback in this game. So Sideline sees this exactly the way I do, that these teams are basically even, and you're giving too much home field to Georgia Tech based on what this line is.
Georgia Tech has had a couple of decent games. They almost beat Louisville, but that game was essentially a home game. Boston College lost at Louisville. if you want to use that as the common opponent, absolutely, Georgia Tech played Louisville a little bit better. But when you look at everything else, Georgia Tech's loss to Bowling Green is just as bad as Boston College's loss to Northern Illinois.
Yep.
Both of them have had some decent games. Boston College just lost to Florida State barely, versus Georgia Tech beat Miami. But really, both of them should have been close losses.
Yep.
Boston College, went on the road and beat Army. They beat Virginia. It's not to say they're a good team, but they kind of look a lot like Georgia Tech. Like they're both of them had some decent games. Both of them have looked pretty rough at times. Both of them losing to a MAC team. Yep. Not good. No. But I honestly think Boston College performance against Florida State was probably more impressive than Georgia Tech's against Miami.
Yep.
And so again, these two teams are really similar. So plus 173 offers some pretty good value there for us. Don't know who wins. We're just taking the value of all those all the odds, I guess I would say.
Yep.
Or of course you can take points if you want, but we love our money lines here because again, people don't understand probability. Moving on, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, South Florida and UConn. To me, when I look at this one, there is a big difference, and that is when you look at the rankings of these. When South Florida has the ball against UConn, South Florida's offense isn't good. UConn's defense isn't good. That's kind of going to be about a draw. And you can see that on the efficiency. Both of them are 12 points away from 100, where 100 is average. The biggest difference is that UConn's offense is competent and South Florida's defense is terrible. UConn ought to be able to put up some points. And then when you look at South Florida's pace, so when UConn has the ball, they should score. When South Florida has the ball, I don't know what they're going to do, but whatever they do, they're going to do it fast. When you look at that pace in the country. Because Jared, we expect 62 points in this game on average. We're going to go over 54, getting the key number of 55 in here. I think it's the wrong key number. I really think 58, 59, 61, 62 are the key numbers we should be thinking about. But hey, give us another key number in 55 just a boot, right?
Yeah. I mean, UConn's offense has been pretty nice this year, more improved than what I would have thought. And okay, sure. So you could say that UConn is a more defensive-oriented football team, but the two faster teams that they've played this season, UtahState and Rice, UConn got to 33 points and 31 points in those games. So when they've played bad defenses and teams that play fast, they as well have put up points. But to your kind of like what you alluded to, for me, this is all about South Florida's defense being god awful unless they are apparently aided by a monsoon against one of the best teams in the country. That Alabama game for South Florida sticks out like a sore thumb against the rest of their schedule. In the games that they haven't played, Alabama, they've given up against FBS opponents. They've given up 41, 29, 30, 56, and 56 again. It hasn't been pretty at all for the South Florida defense.
Who were the two teams that got 56 on them?
UAB and Florida Atlantic.
Honestly, if you throw UConn in that group and you said UConn got 56, I'd be like, sure. I mean, those two teams. I mean, I think FAU, with Casey Thompson, probably better offense, but without him, it's like, I don't know. UAB, we've talked about them. They're just all over the map. Like neither one of those teams strikes me as like drastically better on offense than UConn is. Right. So I'm not necessarily predicting they will get to 56, but it wouldn't be the craziest thing. The South Florida team has a terrible defense and they play so fast. They give their opponent all the opportunities in the world. And like I said, I think that's the key is whatever South Florida does, they're going to do it fast. If they score, it's going to be fast. That's good. If they don't, they're going to punt quickly. That's also good because that keeps their defense out on the field, gives UConn good field position. UConn ought to be able to score quickly. Seems like there's a lot of ways we can get over. Again, I don't know why this is on this side of a key number, but just give us an extra key number to boot over.
I grabbed this at over 57 when the line opened. I thought that was too low. So this is one of those where sometimes we say, hey, here's a number you don't want to go over or under this specific number. You get lots of wiggle room. I'd say play this up to 58.
I was thinking the same thing.
Maybe even 59.
I was thinking the same thing. 58, 59 are the two that I beat, but you're nowhere near that here. So over 54, we like a lot of points to be scored there. Virginia, North Carolina, another game we're expecting some points. North Carolina, top 10 offense now projection going forward. Tez makes a bit of a difference. I mean, that guy is just like all over the field, just running wild. I mean, that was an impressive performance that he put on, when they needed him the most there in the second half specifically. Defensively, North Carolina is not terrible, but they go so fast. Virginia's been more offensive than they've ever been before. Virginia's always been terrible on offense and solid on defense. But you look at the ratings right now, the model thinks they're just as good an offense as defense. That's a new look for them than what we've seen in the past several years, and their pace is above average. It's a very different Virginia team than what we're used to. Model thinks an average of 63 points. Same sort of thing here, I think. 58, 59 are the key numbers you should be thinking about. So, Cousin Jared, we're going over 57. I mean, my main question for you is, are you going over 58? Are you going over 58 and a half? Are you going over 59? Where's your threshold on this? Either way, we think it gets into the 60s.
Yeah, I think it would probably be 58 for me here, just because I do think that North Carolina defense is improved this year. And so if you told me that Virginia came out and field goals. Yeah. And so if you told me that Virginia came out and scored like 14 points in this game, I'd be like, okay, I could buy that. But yeah, North Carolina's offense is just too good. And like the Virginia defense, they gave up 49 points to Tennessee, which going into the season, you're like, that's respectable against Tennessee. But now you've seen what Tennessee's done the rest of the year, and you're like, oh, man, that's something that Tennessee hasn't been able to repeat. They drug Virginia drugged James Madison into a high-scoring game. They gave it 42 points against Maryland. So this Virginia team has just been very different from what it was last year. So I think that, coupled with the fact that you've got the same old North Carolina offense that you've always had, I think over 57, great value here.
Yeah, that Virginia-Tennessee game, you bring that up. That was, at the time, we were like, oh, okay, well, like, Tennessee's offense is going to be good. Virginia's defense is good, but, like, they can't keep up with it. Like, everything we thought about that game has turned out to be wrong, because that one also now, in hindsight, Virginia's defense just not what it was. I don't know what exactly happened. Coordinator play, I don't know what it was, but they haven't been very good at all. But their offense has picked up the pace a little bit for them, which has kept them at not a good football team, because their offense being better. It had a long way to go. I mean, their offense was dreadful, and now it's just, okay, they'll put up a few points, but the main thing is North Carolina is going to score a lot. We always talk about, right, you ought to be able to think through how you're going to lose every bet, because if you're picking a 50-50 type bet, if you can't, then you're not thinking hard enough.
Right.
The fear here is North Carolina gets out to a 48-0 halftime lead, and then just nothing happens, right? Or 35-0 and nothing happens. That's kind of the fear with this. But as long as that sort of thing doesn't happen, if North Carolina even plays 3.5 quarters, they ought to get most of this by themselves. They ought to be able to put up a ton of points with how good they are offensively and how fast they play. To the night game, San Jose State will host Utah State. Cousin Jared, when you look at this, again, not very good football, but we do love some Mountain West. The biggest thing here is that San Jose State, when you look at it on screen, number 58 on offense, I mean, that's a decent offense, especially for a group of 5 team. Otherwise, there's nothing special about this game, nothing special about either one of these teams. The biggest difference is that San Jose State has a little bit of an offense, and that's the differentiator at home. Why we think they win 71% of the time. We'll take some dogs. We'll take some favorites here. We're going to lay the lumber with San Jose State minus 175. B grade pick, Cousin Jared. Had a lot of options of things to pick. What made you pick this one?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that I picked this one is because our boy Chevin Cordero is still probably the best quarterback in the Mountain West, according to Sideline, if not very near the top, where unfortunately I cannot say the same thing for our boy Cooper at Utah State. Not one of the better quarterbacks in the Mountain West. If you would have forced me last week, last week San Jose State played New Mexico, and if you would have forced me on that game, I definitely would have said New Mexico is the right side, San Jose State on the road. I haven't been terribly impressed with San Jose State this season. They ended up crushing New Mexico in that game, and that made me take a second look at San Jose State for the season. And they lost to USC. Okay, so what? They lost to Oregon State. Okay, so what? They lost to Toledo on the road. Toledo.
Traveling across the country.
Yeah. Toledo, good group of 5 team. Got crushed by Air Force. I mean,
which I think that at the time we weren't quite as high on Air Force then as we are now. So I think looking back on it, we definitely give them a pass now. It's like, whatever.
Yeah. And they had the 1-score loss to Boise State where they just dominated the first half, and then Boise State came back and won. That is a very brutal schedule. And then they finally get a team that is much worse than all of those other teams they played, and they absolutely crushed New Mexico last week. Now they're getting to come back home against a Utah State team who played Fresno close last week. Fresno without Keene, their starting quarterback, in that game. Other than that, I'm not really seeing anything that Utah State has done this season that really just gets me going and saying, hey, this is this is an exciting team. I feel like I've got the better quarterback. I've got a better team at home. I've got a team that has been really tested with their schedule so far this season. Whereas I can say the same thing for Utah State. I mean, Utah State's schedule is not too bad, but I mean, not like that San Jose State schedule that I just rolled off. So this is more, I'm getting I feel like I'm getting back a better team at home with a better quarterback. I think these are the kind of things you have to look for in some solid B grade picks or, factors like that.
You mentioned San Jose State's strength of schedule. According to team rankings, they have the third toughest group of 5 schedule so far that they've played, which would explain partially, why they are 2-5. It ranks 62nd in the country, and it's just littered with Power 5 teams up there because they're all kind of having to beat up each other for the most part. Utah State is at 78. So again, Utah State, not like it's like you said, it's not terrible. Yeah, it's just a little bit, a little bit tougher. And so that 2-5 record for San Jose State, very excusable based off of the teams they've played. One of the things with the schedule we talked about last show about UNLV and their strength of schedule. I thought about it later. We should have just made the point succinctly. UNLV strength of schedule is 112. If you take out Michigan, it's probably like 132 because Michigan brings that up. And so that's just something I thought of. And it actually got me thinking about coming up with my own strength of schedule metric. So something, I kind of have on the to-do list. And then at that point, I can make a strength of schedule with what if you took out the worst team? What if you took out everybody's best team, everybody's worst team, that sort of thing. So some fun strength of schedule stuff. You mentioned Mountain West quarterbacks. Just to follow up on that, yes, I do have Chevin Cordero as the best Mountain West quarterback, ranked 53rd in college football. Next closest would be Mikey Keene and then Braden Shager from Hawaii. And then Zach Larry are all in the 60s. So again, some decent quarterback play in the Mountain West, but Cordero's been there for a while and has been pretty good. Coming back home, playing another weak team, maybe a little bit better than New Mexico, but at home, you trust a veteran quarterback like that to get the job done and not mess things up, especially now they've got to win every game they can to get to a bowl because that tough schedule has put them in a tougher spot to get to that bowl eligibility, which obviously, they want to do. 7:30 p.m. Eastern, Army at LSU. Cousin Jared, we like taking the points with Army. I'm not gonna say we do. Now, not the official pick. Model says 31.5, spreads 31.5. So the model says it's spot on. This is weird, but I kind of think taking the points and the over are correlated because I'm not sure LSU can stop anybody. So they can't stop Army. And at some point, Army's going to score enough points where they will cover by definition because there just won't be enough time left for them not to cover. But that said, I expect a lot of points in this game. We're going to go over 58. It's not a strong model edge. Model really thinks 59. But I just don't see how Army stops LSU. And LSU's defense, I know it ranks 62nd, but that still feels high. LSU is breaking the world of models with the way they're playing football this year. Army got played a game with UTSA that got into the 60s. And honestly, I think LSU's a more extreme team than UTSA is. Army held the ball that game for 45 minutes, and that game got into the 60s. So even if you told me Army's going to hold the ball this game, sure, they did that game, and it got well into the 60s. Why wouldn't this one get into the 60s? LSU's defense is just as bad as UTSA's. Their offense is better. Their offense is incredible. Number 2 most efficient offense in the country, according to Sideline. Cousin Jared, over 58. 59 is your key number that I'm really worried about here. I do not think 58 matters. I don't think there will be enough field goals. It will be all touchdowns because LSU won't be able to stop Army's weird offense, and LSU just doesn't get stopped for the most part, and this Army defense is not going to stop them. Lots of touchdowns. This feels like a game that could easily land at 63 or 70 points, just right on the dot with all the touchdowns that are going to happen, right?
Yeah. That's definitely what I would say. I completely echo your thoughts on who's getting stopped. I mean, Army ain't stopping LSU.
No.
And LSU, I can just picture in my mind how frustrated the LSU defense and how frustrated the LSU fans are going to be when Army is just getting 4 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, 4 yards, and just LSU being completely inept and not being able to stop them at all. I think there's going to be a lot of frustration in this game for LSU. The game that comes to mind when I'm looking at this matchup is the 2018 Army-Oklahoma game where Army went to Oklahoma and should have won that game, probably ended up losing in overtime. But that Oklahoma team, probably decently similar to this LSU team, what we've seen so far this season. And Oklahoma just could not get a stop. I mean, could not get a stop. So, like you said, like taking the points as well, but also like the over. This Army offense is better than that Army offense that played Oklahoma a handful of years ago. And I don't think it would be in their best interest to do this in this game, but Army so far this season has been playing faster than what they have in the past. So, yeah, I think there's just a lot to like about this game. You want to take the points with Army, that's great. But we're going to say go over 58 because ain't nobody stopping anybody in this one.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at LSU, the Arkansas game was just like nobody was stopping anybody. It was just points back and forth. Ole Miss put up 55 on them. Missouri got 38. Florida State got 45. And obviously those are all good offenses. And it's not to say that Army's offense is at that level. I just think Army's uniqueness is going to be a really tough matchup for a mediocre defense that hasn't had any time to prepare for them, especially when you talk about the teams that play this type of offense every year. They at least kind of have that, like, we've done this prep before, right? So if you're in the Mountain West, not to say it's easy to stop Air Force, it's not been, and no one has, right? No. Or if you're in conference, well, I guess I'm the American now with Navy, right? You know, you face it every year, so at least you have a little bit to draw off of. When's LSU practiced against for the triple option? Maybe it's happened at some point and I've missed it, but like, I mean, unless Grambling State runs the triple option and I just don't know it, right? Like, it's tough to stop, and the running quarterbacks have killed them. And technically, a lot of that's on the design. You know, the QB, you know, the zone reads, and the scrambles, stuff like that. This is gonna be a little bit different, but it's still going to be really tough for them to stop Army. This Army offense is got that unique style that should allow them to score. LSU should have no problem giving up points. They didn't have a bye week last week to prep for it. It's not quite a trap game. LSU's next game is Alabama, but they do have a bye week. So that at least helps because they're not really looking forward to that. But again, you'd almost rather have the week in front of Army to spend more time prepping for it. The other thing that's happening here, we have no idea. I'm not saying this is happening or not happening. We do know that at times teams have overlooked some of these SEC schools have overlooked the conference games. If you overlook Army, oh my, you're going to get shredded on defense. The LSU still going to score. Absolutely. If their offense overlooks, no big deal. Like, they're going to score left and right. Literally, that offense is incredible. But they're going to get shredded if they're overlooked. I don't know if they have or not. That's just something that, like, it can help us even more, whether you're taking the over or the points. Because again, that's happened. We saw it in years past, Pac-12 schools doing it and losing a ton of those games. Now, this year it looks like the Pac-12 came out and kind of took care of business. But in years past, we've seen some of these Power 5 conferences just really struggle with some of these games because they're overlooking them, and you do not want to overlook this Army offense. They will shred you left and right. Those are our 5 games. Again, stay tuned after the music. We got a 30-second break, and then we're going to cover every single remaining Week 8 game, give you suggestions, thoughts, but you need to be with us on Dub Club. Again, sign up, link in the show description. This week only, you get 3 months for the price of 2. Cousin Jared, parting words before we have a quick water break.
Still flossing my teeth.
I'm proud of you. For those of you who didn't know, I had a root canal, and it was like maybe the most painful experience of my life. So, you know, everybody out there, floss your teeth so that you don't have root canals, because they are terrible. So yes, very good. All right, that'll take us to the music, and then hopefully we'll see you on the other side.